What's up? Welcome back to my channel, or for the first time if you're new. I'm Sylvan, and today I'm going to be reacting to all of the Moment Among the Stars animations for Honkai Star Rail. There's only a handful of these, and realistically they're all pretty short, so this shouldn't be too big of a video. These, largely speaking, are more so meant to just be glimpses into various characters. They're sort of just a step down from a full animated short. So, for example, with this first one, we have Sparkle, who was a very big and prominent character in Penacony, and also just someone that was a big focus for the community as well, but then she also didn't necessarily have enough content to her character that was shown yet to work for a full animated short, so instead they have something like this. And most of them I've seen, some of them I haven't, and one of them, the most recent one, I actually already have done a video on. Feel free to check that one out if you haven't. It's the one on Jiaoqiu. But regardless, feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, leave a comment on your thoughts, and let's get into this. This one's pretty straightforward and simple. It was the first one they did after all.
Like a big non-stop circus, showcasing beasts brawling all day and night. Bears on unicycles.
It uses Sparkle's song from her demo.
Hoops, monkeys juggling bowls. Me, I'm happy being a side character in the background, cheering on those who have the limelight. Then at the climax of the performance, bang! Sparkling like fireworks into brilliant colors.
There are some great visuals here regardless of how short it is. So yeah, very straightforward, less than a minute long, but there is some fun content here. And I recall that when this first came out, people were theorizing the hell out of some of these lines, which I'd like to touch on. So visually speaking, pretty much this entire thing is just Sparkle in what looks like an abandoned Penacony, but the real content of this animation comes in the lines that are said. First, Sparkle says the world's just a big non-stop circus, just stating her view on the world, that in all of her other content is very clear this is what she believes, and it's just sort of a restating of that. That everything's just a performance, it's all just this non-stop circus that is constantly ongoing, so why should you bother taking it seriously? You should just have fun. And she continues to elaborate on that, carrying the metaphor forward by saying showcasing beasts brawling all day and night. All these fights that go on between these people that ultimately do not matter, they're just a performance. We, visually speaking, have the fish iconography of her moving through the streets, bears on unicycles, lions leaping through fire hoops. The bear on unicycle line, this, and also the next line, monkeys juggling bowls, are all just references to various like circus things. I don't think necessarily that those have an exact one-to-one equivalency that she's trying to make reference to, but regardless, they do speak to this idea of everyone in this world, whether they know it or not, is just part of this big performance to entertain whoever is watching, and that it's all rather comedic at the end of the day. But then she drops down from the rooftops and lays in a bed of flower petals as she brings it to herself what her role in all of this is. And she says, me, I'm happy being a side character in the background, which is in many ways what she did throughout Penacony until the very end. She was hiding in the background, not really being that major a player, only really making herself known a couple times, and even then disguising herself so that she can guide other people and the entirety of Penacony towards a desired goal. And she was fine being that side character, cheering on those who have the limelight. But, despite just being a side character, she has some fun plans for the end. And these are the lines that really people went crazy with the theorizing when this first came out, as everyone was trying to figure out what is Sparkle gonna do? Is she gonna burn down Penacony? Is she gonna bring it all up into flames and end up being, in some way, shape, or form, a big bad of the entire arc? Which, largely speaking, didn't happen, but there is precedent for what she's talking about here, as she says, then at the climax of the performance, bang, sparkling like fireworks into brilliant colors. Which, like I said, to an extent she did do, just not to the extent I think people were thinking or theorizing about, in the sense that she didn't really come in the climax as much as she did in the final act resolution. She, technically speaking, was the main antagonist of the final part of the storyline after we had dealt with Sunday and everything, and it was just the resolution. But I wouldn't necessarily consider that the climax. I would consider the climax the stuff with Sunday. So she was a little late on her arrival for that, but she still, largely speaking, does what she is saying here, of giving a surprise final climactic bang to everything in the form of the bomb she planted, and basically set up the entire scenario for the end of Penacony, and where people were theorizing that this would be in a much more malicious way, in the way it actually came out to be, It was just much more goofy, silly, and actually sort of wholesome in a few ways, in the sense of what her intent with it was, which is just sort of cool and interesting. It's very in line with her character, but I feel like something that especially this skewed people towards thinking was that Sparkle was going to be a really big issue and malicious force, but really she's very similar to where Sampo was in the story, in the sense that she was largely leaving herself to the side, helping us along the way, guiding us towards certain things, and just having fun along the way. She hasn't really proven herself to be a malicious force. And then we have the final line, "You think the leading character would dare do this?" Which I think definitely is an intentional red herring towards her being a more malicious, daring force, where in reality, like I said, she is more so this puppet master in the background to a degree, who is guiding things toward a satisfying conclusion, but it is still in line with her character. She still views herself as beyond the scope of the script, beyond being chained down by the established storylines and the performance that is being put on, but she willingly inserts herself regardless, so that she can do what is most entertaining to her, what is most satisfying to her, to adjust the story accordingly. And perhaps you could interpret this as her saying that this level of manipulation and tweaking and twisting and pulling of the strings is something that a leading character would never be capable of. I could see that, but I think predominantly it's more of a red herring line to get us worried about Sparkle and what she's gonna do, which is part of her performance as well. Part of her performance is making it so we can never understand who she truly is, and never understand what she's capable of. And so I feel like this works on both a metatextual level and an in-universe level. She is posturing and performing to make both us, the players, and the people in universe question what she is capable of doing and what she's willing to do. But that's where they leave it. It's very simple, less than a minute long, really just gets to the point and then goes away. So it's cool. It's nothing crazy, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's still fun, and it does get to some of her character from a more metatextual level, I'd say. And the last thing I'd just like to acknowledge about is, in line with what I was talking about, of questioning what Sparkle is capable of, we have this visual of everything we are seeing Penacony in flames as she metaphorically is above it all via the fish. That isn't reality, that is just a possible future that she could enact if she deemed fit, or at least she's making us believe that she could. But it's all just an image in this crystal ball or this bubble or whatever that is, where reality is different from that. She's just clouding who she is. But with that, don't really have anything else to say about this one, so I'm going to move on to the next one. Next up, we have the Moment Among the Stars connected to Acheron, which this one is, weirdly enough, actually more about Robin, technically, because what this is a Robin X Colors collab makeup advert, main of Vesper. Basically, this is just the ad that was on the big billboard screen in Acheron's demo, just shown to us in full. It's only like 30 seconds long. I won't have too much to say about this, but let's go through it anyways. Visually, this is gorgeous, regardless of its content. So we have some of these clips that we briefly have in the demo. We have the same motif in the music.
Apply your color.
And there's that. That's it. It's incredibly simple. It is so straightforward. There is basically nothing to talk about with it, other than the visuals are nice, it looks great, it gets that vibe of a very like brief commercial you'd see for makeup on a big screen while you're driving through a city. And just to point them out, pretty much every shot in some way showed up, at least in part, in Acheron's demo. This is just them all put together into a cohesive whole to be a singular ad. Like, that closing shot was there, the makeup was there, that shot, but it's different wording. It's just very interesting, and it's also just a cute touch for it to be that this is Robin in the ad, as she is a big star in Penacony. But yeah, there ultimately is not much to say about this one, so I'm pretty much just gonna move on. Next we have the Moment Among the Stars for Aventurine, Inherently Unjust Destiny. Now, it's been a minute since I've seen this one, but from what I recall, this is pretty much just an encapsulation of his backstory in many ways, taking various lines and conversations that happen throughout the story of Penacony and just sort of consolidating them into one singular video with some unique visuals. So let's get into it.
Oh, triple-faced soul, Please
Yeah, so
sear
it's
his
all
tongue
within the
and
framework
palms with a
of
hot
the
iron,
conversation
so that he
between
will not be
Sunday
able
and
to fabricate
Aventurine.
lies and make false vows. Question. Are you an Avgin from Sigonia?
Yes.
Are you your clan's sole survivor?
Perhaps.
As a servant, you should not resist your master. Yet, you went and killed that man anyway. Perhaps you ought to represent yourself.
I bet you won't send me to the gallows.
Do you hate and wish to destroy this world with your own hands?
Let's assume, just assuming now, that every time I roll the dice, there's a possibility of achieving this particular outcome. Then I would be quite happy to make that wager.
So this one's interesting because, as I said at the beginning, this one is basically just taking the discussion between Sunday and Aventurine, when Sunday is essentially judging Aventurine and creating a little promotional video about it, as most of these lines come from either that conversation or flashbacks of Aventurine's past. But with the added visuals and music, it creates a very distinct feel that was really interesting to have going into this part of the story. So initially, we just have the lines from Sunday: "O triple-faced soul, please sear his tongue and palms with a hot iron, so that he will not be able to fabricate lies and make false vows." As we have the visual of Sunday across all these screens, looming above Aventurine as he looks at him a bit uncertainly, which, alongside the music, immediately sets this oppressive judgment onto Aventurine. And then, as the questions begin, the screens turn to visuals from his past, showing them again to Aventurine, forcing him to relive these moments. The first question: are you an Avgin from Sigonia? And we see child Aventurine with, I believe, his sister, if I recall correctly, happily on their home planet. And with a pained tone, almost reluctant as well, Aventurine says yes, and then the flames overtake the scene, death and destruction everywhere, as the second question comes: are you your clan's sole survivor? And once again, Aventurine, reluctantly and pained, says perhaps. He's still himself, he's still playing coy, but it is paining him to relive these memories, to remember all of this hardship that he's been through. As we have a direct expression of that, of child Aventurine covering his mouth as the light of the fires burning down his home are the only thing lighting him, and blood streams down the screen. And then we shift, the blood overtaking the screen and then turning into wine, a reflection of the wine being that of Aventurine moments after killing his slave master. And the voice of Jade has come in now, saying, as a servant, you should not resist your master, yet you went and killed that man anyway. Perhaps you ought to represent yourself. Interesting part of this is this transition does not include a question to enter the scene. This perhaps is just the natural flow of his memories, of when he thinks of the desolation of his people and him being the sole survivor, his mind goes to the man he killed to achieve freedom once more, and the woman who gave him a chance, no matter how poisoned that chance may be. And being the man he is, hearing this opportunity, he's willing to take that bet. As he says, key phrasing here being, I bet you won't send me to the gallows. He can hear the tone in Jade's voice and can parse out enough of her intent that he is willing to bet that he won't be sent to the gallows, that she wants to do something more with him, that he could be of use to her, and he is willing to make that bet to survive. At this point, we have this cool, distinct layering of sound and visuals, as in this courtroom, essentially, both the future and past of Aventurine flickers before him as these lines layer on top of each other, a grand unveiling with his future. How bad were our sins? We were born in this world of death, being from his past. But between all of these, the thing that rings out most clearly is the next question from Sunday. Do you hate and wish to destroy this world with your own hands? Which is a very dangerous question, for a variety of reasons. And in response, Aventurine speaks in a very roundabout manner to his answer. But his answer is nonetheless clear, as he says, with a sigh, let's assume, just assuming now, that every time I roll the dice, there's a possibility of achieving this particular outcome. Then I would be quite happy to make that wager, saying that, hypothetically, if I had a chance to destroy the world with my own hand, if even just the possibility was there, he would be quite happy to make that wager. You give him the chance to tear everything he hates down, he'll take it. He'll wager his life on it, as we've seen, which is deeply ominous, and does something I absolutely love to his character, which is he is deeply morally gray. He isn't the kind of person you can concretely say is good or bad. Every action he has taken to survive has been just that, to survive. He has wagered his own life so many times at this point that he is practically ambivalent to it, while also having this deep-seated malice towards all of the things that have wronged him in life. And though he is at a point in his life that he has a modicum of power, he recognizes that he is not truly free. He cannot freely go after anyone who he wants to try to take down all those he hates. But through this line we know that if he had that chance, even just a small chance, he'd go for it. He's just waiting for that opportunity. He'll burn everything down if he thinks he can achieve what he truly wants. And I just love that in a character. That kind of moral ambiguity. And that is where they end us with, to ruminate on that thought, on his character. With its art of his piercing eyes looking straight at us, him holding a chip in his hand like usual, as it just fades out with the music. And while we're here talking about Aventurine, there's a few other things I'd like to say about him, but I'll save those for a little bit later, because would you look at that, Aventurine got 2 moments among the stars for some reason. So let's move on to that one. Now this one, called Non-Zero Sum Game, is much more in line with the Sparkle and Acheron moments among the stars, where the previous one for Aventurine had more that Myriad Celestia style of animation. This one is more the full animation of what Sparkle and Acheron's got. So let's get into it.
Your humble servant Aventurine at your disposal.
Now this sort of shows him from
Just a cog
another
in the
side of his
machine known as the
character, the
strategic
kind he
investment
presents himself as.
I can also play the role of friend. Use me as you wish. Even stab me in the back if you see fit. I don't make deals that don't pay off. So I hope you don't disappoint me.
Yeah, so like I was saying, this much more is the person that Aventurine presents himself as in his everyday life. Where the previous one was cutting to the core of who he is as a person and what he's capable of, this is how he presents himself. The direction he presents himself in when making deals, when on the job. He labels himself as a humble servant, Aventurine, at your disposal. He's a humble servant, not someone to be afraid of, but someone to use to your liking. But interestingly enough, this entire time, as he's describing himself this way, the person he's making a deal with here clearly is nervous and anxious around him. They clearly have something to gain out of this, as we see, but they are not the one comfortable in the scenario, despite the fact that, according to Aventurine's words, he's the one being used here, not them, which places a contrast between his words versus his actions. He introduces himself further, saying, just a cog in the machine known as the Strategic Investment Department. He sits down with some flair as drinks are brought over, and he says, I can also play the role of friend. I can be whatever you want me to be. I'm just a cog in the machine. I am your humble servant or a friend. Whatever you would like to see me as, I can be that for you. I am nothing but a canvas you can paint what you need onto. But despite those words, the way he's acting is that of the person in charge, the person with the confidence to do what they want, where the person he's making a deal with is the person who is nervous, uncomfortable in the situation. But they reveal the money and they get excited, but taking a single coin, Aventurine leans back, says, use me as you wish, continuing this thought that he is nothing but a cog, a tool, a servant. Even stab me in the back if you see fit. He will not be upset if you even betray him. Use him and then toss him aside if you deem fit. He does not care, or at least he wants you to think he doesn't care. Now, of course, if the previous animation is anything to go off of, if you do that, you're probably added to his list of people he's coming back for revenge against, but he understands his position in all of this. He understands that he isn't a person of any value, but he's disposable at the end of the day, and he's comfortable in that. He's just waiting for that chance where he can turn the tables and achieve everything he wants, but until then, he's willing to be used. He doesn't care how many people betray him or use him. Regardless, he'll either end up dead in a ditch, So what, does another betrayal matter? Or eventually he'll be able to get back at you for it. And well, if that ever happens, don't hold it against me. You're the one who betrayed me. I said it was okay, but karma has a way of getting back to you. That's sort of the interpretation I get from how he presents himself here versus how he talks in the previous one. But as he says this, he has this little trick where he is flipping the coin around in his hands, but then he clenches his hand and then it becomes one of his chips. As he says, pretty much his only condition here, he does not make deals that don't pay off. So he hopes that you don't disappoint him. He doesn't care if you use him, see him as just a servant, as long as you don't disappoint him. As long as the deal you strike with him pays off. He is willing to put himself down and be used and abused as long as that brings him one rung up the ladder towards his goals. And that's where they leave it. And with that, I've pretty much said everything I want to about Aventurine in this impromptu analysis of his character, so I'm going to move on to the next one. Next up, we have Jade's moment among the stars, Bona Jade Exchange. And if you know anything about her character and storyline, then you know that that name is pointing to some particularly cruel dealings being made, perhaps some devilish contracts. Let's get into it.
Wealth is the recipe to happiness. Giving it to those who desire happiness is making the best use of it.
Magically granting wealth.
They only have to pay an equivalent price. I don't mind if customers buy back their collateral after they accomplish what they want. But I'll propose an even better alternative to them.
Using the music
A way
from
to
her
make them
demo
go
like
further
the Sparkle one
and
did.
climb higher at a small price. Guess what they choose in the end? Hello. My name is Jade. I'm here at your request. What are you willing to exchange?
So this is essentially an encapsulation of the dark side of Jade, which, let's face it, is the side she presents herself as. She doesn't really hide it. But regardless, this little mini story here is a perfect encapsulation of her as a person. We have the establishment of the scene panning down, her getting a drink, expectant looking man. As she says, wealth is the recipe to happiness. She offers up a contract, and as it dissipates, implying that it has been signed, as the dissipated bits of it flow towards the man and then take the form of jewelry, as she says, giving it to those who desire happiness is making the best use of it. And then here it's where it begins to truly shift a little bit, as she continues saying anyone can receive this blessing, as we see the guy within the glass ecstatic at his sudden wealth. But she's not even looking at him, she's just swirling her glass of wine. As she says, they only have to pay an equivalent price. I can offer wealth, that's not an issue. You have to pay up in accordance. And clearly this man does not know what he signed up for. The wine sloshes past him, his expression lowers a bit. It passes and he becomes concerned. And then we enter this metaphorical space as he's on a chessboard, reaching out towards this shooting star, which is implied to be whatever his goal in life is. As she says, I don't mind if customers buy back their collateral after they accomplish what they want, but I'll propose an even better alternative for them, as she places, I believe, a queen onto the board, which causes ripples in the wine, and she says, a way to make them go further, as the chessboard separates out into this staircase for the man to follow up towards the star, and he gets this smug expression on his face, as if he has everything handled and figured out and he's gonna be able to get everything he desires. Little does he know, but there's once again that caveat, as she looms over him, saying, oh, but just at a small price, every step I offer you towards your goals, I'll take something away as well. And as he almost reaches it, she snaps it out of existence, and he falls into the abyss, as she says, guess what they choose in the end? These people will give up anything for their goals, but they won't realize until they're too far gone that they're nothing at the end of it. I've taken everything that they are. And thus they fall into the maw of the beast. And it's here that we have her looking through a Jade, sitting once again at the bar with her glass of wine, with a new person, a new man, her new target, her new victim, who looks at her curiously, concerned perhaps, not aware of what his future entails if he takes her up on her deals, but signifying the continuing of that cycle as she introduces herself, saying, "I'm here at your request. What are you willing to exchange?" Signifying that this will not stop anytime soon. As long as people have things that they wish to achieve, as long as people have goals they yearn for, she will always be there to offer them a quick way to that goal, at a price, but only one they're willing to exchange. It's not her problem if they don't realize the cost that they are truly paying, as long as they say they are willing. And it's here where the comparison to a devil figure is most clear for Jade. She is this dark influence in people's lives that appears to offer you an easy way out, at a price that you don't fully understand what you're paying when you do. But by the time you've achieved what you thought you wanted, she's already taken everything from you. And as I was saying, this is just a perfect encapsulation of that concept, which is at the core of her character. And it's things like this that very much make me interested to see what Jade's part going forward in the story will be when she next shows up. As really, we just got her introduction in Penacony. She only showed up at the very end to introduce herself and what her deal is. So I'm very curious to see whether or not she will play a big part in the future, because it seems like the Stonehearts, though not identical, are playing something similar to the role of the Harbingers, in the sense of they're not quite our enemies, but they're not quite our allies. And they are this large group of morally ambiguous figures, all working vaguely towards the same goal, funnily enough, of fighting the gods in a way, just for slightly different reasons, but who all have their own personal goals and internal strife. So I'm very curious to see if she'll come up again, and if so, how. But that's all just speculation at this point, so I will move on to the next one. Now we're actually to the last one already. There were only so many of these after all. They only started in Penacony. And this one is Jiaoqiu's Lost and Adrift. And I've actually already made a reaction to this one when it first came out. When I first did that reaction, I had not seen this, of course, and I had not done the story yet for 2.4, so I had basically no clue about Jiaoqiu's personality. I didn't even know how to pronounce his name at the time. Well, let's face it, I'm probably mispronouncing it still anyways, but whatever, I'm closer than not, I think. So I was going into this completely blind, attempting to grasp at something of his character. But I feel like I did a pretty good job trying to get the heart of his character. I feel like a lot of the things I was saying and talking about based on my analysis were reflected in the storyline and how he acts and presents himself in-game. So because of that, I'm not going to be as thorough about this one, but I will just comment on a few things. If you want to see a more thorough analysis of this, go back to that original video, check out my original reaction. I go through everything basically line by line.
Worldly matters are fickle, much like a maze. Twists and turns, crisscrossing
I
paths.
love the artistic style of this.
You leave Rainsore Lake and step onto the battlefield. A healer's purpose is to mend wounds and save lives. You pull the dying from death's grip, only to see them march back into it. Saving one person is child's play. Saving the world is as hard as reaching the heavens. Do I press forward or run away? You can't help but ask yourself, how does a healer heal himself? They answer with victory. Every life saved makes for the salvation of all. Now, you must make another choice. Will the result of this treatment be life or death? Are you ready to face the end? Jiaoqiu.
So this is an amazingly beautiful look at the heart of Jiaoqiu's character. Given that he didn't get a Myriad Celestia trailer, this is the clearest look into his character we have outside of the game itself, as typically the demos and trailers don't really get to the heart of a character as much as they just show off their vibe. So I'm very appreciative that we got this. But like I said before, I'm not going to go through this line by line as I already did in my original reaction, but the overall idea that this is landing on is this concept of he is a healer, he is a person who has dedicated his life to saving others, and he is good at it. He is capable. As he says, it is child's play to save a single person, and he has plenty of experience. He has watched countless times people run into battle only to return beaten, bruised, and injured, and dying only for him to save their life. But where it becomes hard is when, after healing them and saving their life, they just go back out into the battle and get themselves killed once again. And it has placed doubt in his heart. It has made him question the purpose of what he does. He can save someone once, maybe even twice, maybe even 3 times, but at a certain point they will die if they keep just running headlong into the flames. And so he questions the purpose of it. If all he is doing is delaying the inevitable, if everyone he saves is bound to just die some point later, why bother saving them in the first place? And so it's at this point that he doubts himself. He questions, should he press forward or run away? And we have this dual image of him, one in light, one in dark. And as it shifts towards the dark, we get this view of Fei Xiao leading her soldiers forward, him looking at their backs, questioning, does he follow them or does he stay back and run away? Does he give up? Does he let these doubts overcome him? And it's at this point he asks, how does a healer heal himself? Is that even possible? Can my qualms and doubts be healed? Can I be fixed? The burdens I carry are so heavy, will I ever be able to be free of them? And it's here where we have, in my mind, Fei Xiao speaking to him, her words being that the way that a healer heals yourself is through victory, through achievement. Yes, every person you save may just run headlong back into battle, but every life you save makes for the salvation of all. This is not an individual basis that we are working on. This is a grand scale. Every single person you save leads us closer to saving everyone. We cannot afford to just give up in this grand war. If you were to give up, like you say, that would be the end. It would make everyone you saved, the loss of their lives, meaningless. But their lives are not meaningless if you keep going. Saving their lives meant that they could move one step forward, bring everyone behind them that one step forward with them, meaning that eventually, even if countless more must die to achieve our goals, one day, built upon this path of bodies, we will succeed, we will achieve salvation, and if that path can be paved in as few bodies as possible, then we will know we have succeeded. That is what Fei Xiao, in my mind, speaks to Jiaoqiu when he develops these doubts, when she pulls him out of retirement. And so, with that, he faces the flames, looks headlong into death, and asks himself the question, will the result of this treatment be life or death? Will he survive this encounter, returning to the fray, exiting out of retirement to support Fei Xiao? And then he phrases it a different way. Are you ready to face the end, Jiaoqiu? And it's those two lines which immediately make me think of, now that I've gone through the story, of the sacrifices he makes for Fei Xiao's sake, for the Xianzhou's sake. He was willing to die for the sake of the greater good and for Fei Xiao. He gladly poisoned himself and let himself be bled out just to give others an edge against Hule. And so that is, I believe, the answer to his own question. He is ready to face the end, if it's for the right reason. He may not have an answer to the first question when he does it, of will this end in life or death, but if it is death, he is ready to face that. He is willing to accept that. As we see afterwards, though he survives, he has the scars to remind him of that cost. But he is not sad, he is not upset, he is content with that. His doubts are gone. He does not doubt his own actions anymore. He is confident in what Fei Xiao has told him. And even if she is sad and upset and regrets that he was forced into that position where he had to sacrifice for her sake, he does not regret it even once. And so I see that as the answer to these final questions. And it's really satisfying to see how something as simple as a 1.5 minute long promotional video can tie into the themes and arc of an entire character in the game. And it's that kind of thing that I absolutely love. In many ways, this moment among the stars as well as then how he was presented in the game, was what convinced me to pull for Jiaoqiu, other than of course him being mechanically good with Acheron. But other than that, I don't necessarily have anything else to say about him that wouldn't be just going into a massive diatribe about his character and the recent Xianzhou storyline as a whole, so I'll save that for later perhaps. But for now, I think I'll end things there. I would absolutely love to see more Moment Among the Stars in the future. They've been much more infrequent since Penacony, but I'll be curious to see any future ones they do. In many ways, the recent Rappa animated short was more of a Moment Among the Stars in many ways than not, but it was more distinct, so because of that I'll let it slide being called a full animated short. But regardless, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Feel free to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment on your thoughts, and I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye!